Well, beloveds, tonight I am glad to welcome you to the three best practices for increasing giving in your congregation webinar. I am part of the philanthropy team, the United Church of Christ philanthropy team, and I am the West Region Generosity Officer. I'm based in Denver, Colorado tonight, and I'm joined tonight by another of my team members, Reverend Jacqueline Owen. She will introduce herself here shortly, but you see on the screen my dear colleague, Reverend Andrew Warner, who put together this wonderful presentation we'll receive tonight. Reverend Warner is on sabbatical right now. So we'll accept your prayers for him that he's having a restful time, that he's renewing himself in this time of his sabbatical, and that he'll come back to us refreshed. And on another occasion, you'll be able to meet our colleague, Reverend Andrew Warner, who services conferences, and then he's also the primary person that runs the Wisconsin Foundation for the Wisconsin Conference of the United Church of Christ. So he is a valued team member and colleague of ours in the Office of Philanthropy. Reverend Owen, would you like to introduce yourself tonight, please?
Good evening. My name is Jacqueline Owen, and I am the development strategist for our team. And in my role, I wear a lot of hats. I'm the annual fund manager. I coach our generosity officers, and there are days where I just do data entry. I like to say that I do what's before me to make our team successful.
Very good. Thanks so much. The three best practices for increasing giving in your congregation today are these three. Number one, teaching and thanking people as often as we pass the plate. Number two, the pastor knowing how much people pledge and give. And finally, number three, implementing and making sure you have running in your congregation a well-functioning online giving option. So those are our three tonight, our three best practices. Tonight, we're going to consider generosity. Now, the concept of generosity, as explained by Christian Smith, will appear on your screen. And as you are taking a look at the definition of generosity given to us by Christian Smith, as I read that, and words or phrases or things about the definition actually hit you or resonate with something within you, we invite you to go into the chat and just name those words or those concepts or those things that really speak to your spirit tonight as you are listening in on this definition given to us by Christian Smith. So tonight, by generosity, I mean the virtue of giving good things to others freely and abundantly. Generosity, thus conceived, is a learned character trait that involves attitude and action, entailing both the inclination and actual practice of giving liberally. Generosity is not a haphazard behavior, but a basic orientation to life. It entails not only a moral good expressed, but also certain vices rejected, such as selfishness, greed, fear, and meanness. Generosity also involves giving not just anything, but rather giving those things that are good for others. What exactly generosity gives can vary. It can be money, possessions, time, attention, aid, encouragement, emotional availability, and more. But it always intends to enhance the true well-being of the receiver. Beloveds, That's generosity from Christian Smith's perspective. But what are some of the things about generosity that strike you about that definition and how you can use this definition in places like your consistory meetings, places like worship, and places like times after worship where people might discuss generosity on their own with this definition as a jump off point? What strikes you about generosity? What are some of the kinds of things we're seeing reflected, Reverend Owen, in the chat tonight?
David Hawk says it's not haphazard, but a lifestyle. And I think that's really important, this idea that we can learn generosity. The second comment is from Lisa Locken. Giving liberally, good for others, well-being of the receiver. Linda Moore says truly it's for the well-being of the receiver. So we've seen that twice. And June brings up an excellent point. There are varied ways of giving. It's not just monetary. It involves attitude and action, giving time, attention, aid, and encouragement. So we can see from these responses that we're expanding our view of generosity, and that's very helpful.
Outstanding. Thanks for getting us off to a great beginning tonight. Generosity, as we present it in our congregations, beloveds, has got to be, if nothing else, it's got to be fun. So tonight, we want to consider one of the fun tactics to share generosity in your congregations. Maybe something you've considered before, but this is something that the Wisconsin Conference has been doing for quite some time. This is called an unselfie. As you can see from the slide in front of you, the unselfie is pulled together with people saying, I give to blank because blank. Now, this doesn't necessarily refer to just giving to the church. It encompasses all the great things that UCCers like to give to. You know, in the United Church of Christ, we give to a whole lot of causes and a whole lot of people, places, and things. And you'll find when you do unselfies in your congregation that there'll be all kinds of answers that come up from folk in your church. The unselfie might say something like, I give to the Colorado Symphony because I love music, or something along those lines. What you give to and why you give to it. Let's return to the chat to see if there's a few unselfies you might want to try tonight as we gather in our time together online. You give to blank because blank. Reverend Owen, do we have some unselfies maybe that people have recorded already?
Not yet, but I'm quite sure they'll be coming in. So this made me think about my gifts to the Cleveland Food Bank. I give to the Cleveland Food Bank because I know that being hungry is not a great feeling.
Mm, very
Lisa,
good.
yeah. Cheryl Kara. Oh, wow, they're really coming in now.
Okay, let's hear some unselfies.
I give to the Jericho Project because I believe in helping kids learn.
Amen.
I give to the food pantry because I don't want anyone to go hungry.
Yes.
I give to share because they provide food and clothing to the community. I give to our 40 days of Lent offering because, okay, this is going a little fast. I give to the local food program as the schools, so kids go to school able to learn and not worry about being hungry. So that's coming up quite a bit, this idea of food pantries and feeding the hungry. This is a beautiful one. Oh, I give because it keeps me humble and not greedy, right?
Amen.
Amen. Thank you all for sharing. Those are very motivating.
Beloveds, as you develop your 8.5 by 11 sheet that says, I give to blank because blank, make sure that people get pictured with their actual unselfie so that these pictures connect with the various causes and the things that people are passionate about giving to. And they don't only have to be passionate about giving to our churches and our churches only. Amen.
Amen. James, I'm going to read one last one before you move on to the next slide. I give,
Okay.
I give to seminary to promote theological education for those who are in need to further their education.
Amen. Love
Amen.
that. Thank you
Yes.
so much. All right. Beloveds, as we look at these slides before you now, under the landscape of giving, um, we notice some very important 11-year trends around the United Church of Christ. We recognize that when we are looking at these trends, the trends are very similar, both for the national setting of the United Church of Christ and for this Illinois conference that has been studied over the last 11 years, marking their 11-year trend. Uh, we see that in both cases, we have seen the kinds of changes in membership that show a decline, a decline that evens out some for national, but a decline nonetheless, a decline that is continuing in Illinois, but by no means only applies to the Illinois Conference. As we look around at our over 30 conferences in the United Church of Christ, what we recognize is that this trend over the last 11 years holds pretty true. And we're grateful to our Center on Analytics, Research, Data, and Development, or our CARD division of the United Church of Christ, for pulling together these trends based on your yearbook reporting. It made me think of the congregation that I served for 20 years during this 11-year period. That congregation, for instance, I had a year where I had one confirmand to report to the national setting of the United Church of Christ, while the family that brought their young man for confirmation that year was very intent on having him go through confirmation. I hoped that I could move his confirmation class to the next year where he might be with 5 or 6 or 7 other young people so that the numbers might look great. I reported that one confirmation that year because I was attempting to be pastoral with that family. And that young man was confirmed that year. But it represented a time in that 11-year trend of our own decline within that congregation. Study the trends in your own congregations. You know, when you're having many funerals, and fewer baptisms. You know when the confirmation classes are getting smaller. You know when folks are not joining as frequently as perhaps at another era in the time of the church, that some of those declines are not just things that are happening out there in the UCC, but they're things that are happening right there in your congregation or even in your conference. As I've talked to conference ministers in the Western region of the United Church of Christ, they have shared with me their own sadness at the frequency of congregations either closing or congregations changing the kind of pastoral leadership they have, where in previous eras, they might have had a multi-staff situation. Some of those congregations now have a single pastor or a solo pastor, or they might have gone to a part-time pastorate, or there are congregations around in our different conferences that are even embracing lay leadership because that's what they need to do. And all of this has affected their OCWM giving to the wider church. What we do with OCWM and seeing these declines is we recognize we're all in this together, beloveds. And together, we are going to turn these trends around. Together, we're going to figure out ways to make sure that we turn those frowns of decline upside down into increases and trends over the next 11 years that aren't declining any longer, but rather evening out and perhaps even going the other way. That's our hope. And we always do that together, beloveds. Together is our charge to get away from these trends that are declining together. In the national study of congregations' economic practices that has been put together by the Lake Institute, I would share with you that there is some good news across not just Protestant denominations, but in interfaith settings where folks have reported about declines in giving and or membership. There are about four conclusions from this study that I want to share with you tonight that I hope will be a blessing to you to understand this isn't something we're only facing in the United Church of Christ. The growth or decline in attendance does not appear to be predictive of a growth or decline in giving across the board. What we've seen is that even as attendance patterns, even as there have been a decline of the people we see week to week, that the people who do show up and the people who do give have studied their giving. They've studied it, and the decline in attendance didn't necessarily mean that there was a decline in giving. Additionally, the authors of the study note that the most striking finding may be that while membership and attendance patterns are changing in American congregations, declines in participation are not, as of yet, leading to a uniform negative impact on congregational finances. Rather, congregations are figuring out creative ways to not only meet the budget, but to do the kinds of things they do in mission and to achieve the kinds of things they achieve as congregations, in spite of the fact that there may be fewer attendees that they're seeing Sunday to Sunday. The second conclusion from the study says that most congregational funds come through in the offering plate. But as many of you know, and have observed about the offering plate and the checks that come in week to week, that once we implement digital giving options, many of us for the first time implemented digital giving during COVID, we find that once digital giving is in place, those congregations are congregations that tend to experience an increase in giving. The ones that have digital giving as an option increase the giving that happens in their congregations, along with what comes in week to week in the offering plates. The third conclusion of this study is that only 45% of congregations use pledging as a tool in promoting generosity. And the authors note that running an annual stewardship campaign has less bearing on revenue than we might expect. That one was a surprising finding for me as someone who's pastored for about 26 years in the United Church of Christ. I always placed a lot of importance on that annual stewardship campaign. When we implement a program of giving where thanking and touching folk with thank yous happen year round and educating around generosity happens year round, we find there's more giving that our congregations are doing. They're doing more giving in situations where there's more than just the annual stewardship campaign that they're depending on. Finally, the final conclusion we named from the study is that only about a quarter of pastors, 1/4 of pastors know in the United Church of Christ, 1/4 of pastors know what their members are pledging and giving. We're inviting congregations tonight to begin really thinking about that. Let's think about how much the pastors know about the pledging patterns and the giving patterns of their members. The more they know, the more they can thank members. The more they know, the more they can be encouraging to members and their families. The more they know, hopefully, the more they can help. Amen.
Amen. James, you talked about turning the tide around. I do want to mention a comment from Chris Alexander.
Please.
Our congregation, first congregation,
How can I email if she's on?
if you are unmuted, could you please mute your microphone? Thank you. Our congregation, first congregation UCC of Santa Rosa went to 3/4 time pastor, but I believe we were able to restore to full time.
They were able to restore to full time? Is
Yes,
that what you said?
Yes, restore the pastor to full time.
Wow. That's encouraging. Thanks for
Amen.
sharing that. Amen. Those stories and those testimonies are extremely important. Let's tell the story when we have congregations like that congregation that's reporting tonight that Reverend Owen mentioned. Let's report that out.
Try and get the video on the phone.
Very, very good.
I don't know how to do that though either. So.
Jeffrey Nichols, can you please mute?
Beloveds, our next slide tonight is about the frequency of teaching about giving.
Okay, that didn't work.
And this one is concentrated on primarily United Church of Christ congregations. And it shows that when we teach more frequently about giving, we begin to get better results in terms of the giving that's happening. And yet, even though we know that, only 9% of our congregations in the UCC teach weekly about generosity. That number goes up to 12% that we share monthly in terms of our teaching about giving. The most frequent amount of teaching about giving happens in the UCC either quarterly or yearly, as you can readily see, with quarterly coming in at 36% and yearly coming in at 35%. The surprising thing in this particular graphic is that 8%, a whole 8% of UCC congregations, beloveds, never teach about giving and generosity in their settings. But the more we teach, the more people give. Let's make sure that we're doing our best to teach more. Ask yourselves, how much, what are the kinds of things you can do in your congregation to teach more frequently about giving? Are there things in the chat that you might want to share about the teaching of giving in your congregations tonight? What are some of the things you would share about how frequently that happens? Are you one of those yearly churches teaching yearly just at the time of the stewardship campaign? Do you find that teaching happens quarterly in your setting? Where is your congregation these days in terms of how frequently you find there to be teaching about giving? And not just one sermon a year necessarily by your pastor.
James, clarifying.
Yes.
Kimberly Donaldson, not sure if you're taking questions throughout the presentation, but what kind of teaching about giving are you referring to? Can you give some examples, James?
Sure. So earlier in the presentation, we talked about the unselfie. The unselfie is a way of teaching about generosity and giving that has to do with the passions and the giving of your congregation members, not just to your church, but to all kinds of things they give to. You might find that you have a lot of pet lovers in your congregation that give to the local pet shelter. You might find that there are folk that give towards various causes in the arts around the city and so forth, or the town where you live. You might find that we found just tonight many respondents who said they gave to local food banks because they want to see an end to hunger in their towns or in their settings. When we talk about teaching on giving, we're talking about generosity in our congregations. Consider what it means for folk to talk about the ways in which the church itself has impacted their lives. What kinds of things has the church been generous in doing in their missions programs? We'll see some slides later in our presentation tonight that you can make sure folk know about and are aware of things people do to actually show their gratefulness to your congregation. Perhaps folk have received clothes from a clothes giveaway that you've had, or blankets from a blanket giveaway, or quilts that have been made by a quilt guild within your congregation. Everything, everywhere you see generosity happening around your congregation, where you're doing good for others, tell those stories. Those stories are stories about giving that we need to unearth and talk
James,
about, beloveds. Yes.
James, I have some wonderful shares in the chat.
Okay, please
I'd
help
like
me.
to read a few out loud.
All right.
Cheryl Kerr, we teach every Sunday during the call to the offering, but that's just 3 to 4 sentences. Our hope is that every week it will be something different, something that folks can take to heart. Julia Hollister said, we offer words of invitation to generosity every Sunday with a major pledge drive. Marcia, we begin doing stewardship moments where members tell why they give to our church. This is powerful. It's the personal stories.
Yes. Yes. When giving and generosity is not just the domain of one committee within the church or one team within the church, It's not just the finance folk talking about the giving going on or the generosity that happens in your church congregation. That's bound to have a positive effect on what happens around giving and generosity in your congregations. Try some new things, some new ways in terms of what you teach in your churches through what you do with your testimonies and the things that you share about the impact of your faith community on families, on your community, on the world, and on one another.
Dear
Reverend
James,
Owen.
thank you so much for expanding on that slide and giving us a lot of meat. I'd like to turn our attention now to this idea of gratitude and giving thanks. How do we show appreciation? And I want to share with you a personal story. My niece Mia just got her annual work evaluation, and she shared with me that it wasn't from her immediate supervisor, but it was from her uh, team leader. So this was her boss's boss. And she said, Auntie, I didn't even know that this person saw me and recognized my contribution to the company. I got a glowing review, and she was just smiling from ear to ear. And I thought, wow, this was a powerful way of thanking my niece for allowing a team leader to give her that evaluation. So think about ways that you can be creative in doing this. Does your church only say thank you when it's time for the tax letter at the end of the year? Or do you give thanks each time a person makes a pledge? Do you give thanks once a person has fulfilled that pledge? How about your first-time donors? Are you giving thanks to them specifically? There's so many creative ways that we can say thank you.
Amen. Thank you, Reverend Owen. I appreciate you tonight. Amen.
Oh, thank you.
Amen. Beloveds, as you work to teach about the spiritual practice of generosity, and indeed, that's exactly what it is, a spiritual practice, consider engaging people in their motivations for making a gift. In my work with donors, I find that people will tell me stories about 4 basic motivations behind a gift that they're making to the United Church of Christ. We know that the gifts that people give often express their deepest hopes, as you see on the screen before you. People want to see some change in the world and feel like your church offers a way to make that change happen. Their hope to see that change often hinges on the things you all do together in mission and ministry in your church. Get people to start talking about their hopes. Gifts are often motivated also by folks' enduring values. You can see that at the bottom of your screen tonight. Their enduring values might be something like a thirst or hunger for justice, or they might want to see the world come to a place where we study war no more, a time when there's peace, and a peace that pervades, and a peace that causes us to show marching towards that beloved community that we all dream about living in and participating in as people of faith. That's a deep motivation for giving. We find that one of the other motivations is folk want to express faithful risks with their gifts. I find especially that with entrepreneurial people who base their life on taking risks, they often want to see their church take some risks too. Many times we get in the mindset that we've got to be safe. We got to do the safe thing, take the safe option, take the safe way. But there are individuals who will only give when they see their church making a risk to do the big thing. I can remember in the capital campaign that we had at the Church of the Open Door, United Church of Christ in Miami, Florida, where I was pastor. During that capital campaign, folks said they wanted to have Dr. Maya Angelou as our guest and that we could pack a whole arena, the Sunrise Music Theater out in one of the Miami suburbs, if we could just have Dr. Maya Angelou come and be our guest. At that time, Dr. Maya Angelou's speaking fee was over $10,000. So this represented for us a bigger risk than we had ever taken during my pastorate with them. It turned out that we had to secure that theater 9 months in advance. The closer we got to that time of Dr. Maya Angelou coming, the more kinds of things happened around Miami that gave me pause. I think I must have worried about that thing for 9 straight months, y'all. And as we got closer, the Miami Heat made the playoffs. In fact, we found out that the Miami Heat had acquired LeBron James. And that was one of those years where the Miami Heat actually won their playoff games and began proceeding through the playoffs. And one of the Sundays that they were planning to play was the very same Sunday we were bringing Dr. Angelo for our program. We knew they were going to fill up American Airlines Arena downtown in Miami for the Miami Heat, and they surely did. But we sold out of our tickets too. We sold out that Sunrise Musical Theater in the suburbs of Miami. And Dr. Maya Angelou came and she blew our minds with her program that night. There are some people who want to see you taking risks with their gifts. They want to see their gifts working towards the good of all and towards things that are bigger than just your congregation and your congregation alone. And then one of the motivations we see for folks that are donors and givers and generous givers is that we all express our heartfelt gratitude when we give our gifts. These are our 4 enduring and basic motivations behind giving gifts. Gratitude, showing gratitude, expressing our deepest hopes, taking faithful risks, and expressing our values. These are the things that you want to get folk talking about in your congregation. These are the kinds of things that you want to get them working on their unselfies with. These deepest hopes they may have, or the values that are expressed through their gifts. You can design an adult education hour around conversations between people about these 4 motivations for their gifts. You can invite 4 people to speak about a gift. They don't need to share the amount of the gift given, but they do need to connect it to one of those motivations, how their motivation connects to one of these 4 ideas. Then you can invite people into conversations about a gift that they made somewhere else and what motivated that gift to that organization that might be one outside of your church. People grow in generosity, beloveds, when they become more reflective about the reasons for their giving. You can use these motivations, these 4 motivations, for people to share their testimonials about giving. I know we've got another special guest to share with you, and that we hope you will listen to. Reverend Owen, would you take us into that invitation?
Is this for Reverend Dr. John Dorhauer?
This is for our former President and General Minister of the United Church of Christ, the Reverend Dr. John Dorhauer. Yes, it is.
Could you go to the next slide, please, and see if we can play the video?
Okay, I can do that.
Yeah, we're struggling with sound from the video. I do apologize. What I'm going to do is type in the title of this YouTube video. It's 2 minutes long, and John does a fantastic job of talking about motivation, and he quotes the Bible. So I'm going to type it in the chat, and I strongly suggest that you look at it. Try to view it tonight. It's an excellent explanation of motivation and giving. And again, we apologize that we cannot get sound for this. James, could you move on to the next slide, please? So let's look at messaging. And I think this slide explains it all. How do you message your mission, your church's mission? Is it join my church so you can help pay for the new roof, which is not very encouraging. It's not very motivating. And it comes from this place of scarcity and lack. Or is your message discover with me God's spirit and beloved community? I mean, you can just feel the difference in that messaging. Even when you send email messages, what's your subject line? What invites people in? What makes them want to know more about what you're doing in your church, about what you are doing in your community? So do some soul searching and think about this in the days and weeks to come. What is our message and what is the best way to convey it?
Amen. Beloveds, it's my joy to share with you some of the work of Reverend Andrew Warner at this time. This is our stewardship theme for the coming year. Imagine together. Now, you can find the materials for Imagine Together at www.uccresources.com/generosity. That's www.uccresources.com/generosity. The stewardship packet for this coming year and this theme, Imagine Together, is only $49.99 for the whole set of materials. This theme, Imagine Together, makes the connection between donor generosity and the ministry and mission of your congregation. The materials in it include extensive resources for worship, sermons, and faith formation for children, youths, and adults. The materials also provide practical tools such as logos, commitment cards, bulletin inserts, and letters. Guidance for every step of your campaign helps you, beloved, make the best use of this robust set of materials. This year-round set of materials found in the packet, Imagine Together, can help you develop an education plan that includes adults, youths, and children, and engages people through worship and faith formation classes. Also, it includes a section on improving your thanking process. So much more than just a poster, letter, and pledge cards in this packet, Imagine Together, just for you. Use the slogan, Imagine Together, beloveds, not just the pictures we send you or the logos we send you, but also use Imagine Together with pictures from your local congregation. Use the slogan with an image from your church like this. This is a tiny home project at a church in Louisiana. For church members who did this mission project, this image reminds them of the life of the person housed in that tiny house, of course, but it also reminds them of the youths and young adults and the other volunteers who helped with this project. It will help them imagine more possibilities together. Check out this way of appropriating imagine together. The theme is used under a multi-generational picture of happy people in your church standing before surely one of the mission projects that they have of collecting blankets. They all have thumbs up. These are all folk in a congregation that are happy, pleased with the fellowship that they're sharing. Pleased because they are changing lives with that mission project they've been working on. Pleased because their ministry is not just about them. Their ministry is about impacting the world. They're imagining new possibilities together. We want you in your congregations to imagine new possibilities together too. We want you to use testimonies in your congregations to help inspire greater gifts and greater giving. We want you to invite people to testify to how your church, ask the question to folk, how does your church change lives? Be ready to hear that story from that individual. Perhaps that individual can deliver their testimony in a kind of mission moment or a generosity moment during a given worship service. Maybe you can have them over a month's period of time. How does your church change lives? When you hear different answers, some people, of course, will answer the same thing that someone else does, but there'll be people that come up with creative answers to these questions. How does the church change your life? When do you see your congregation at its best? How does your congregation or your church make a tangible difference in your community? And how does worship in your church change your life? Imagine that behind each one of these pictures before you on this testimony slide, there's a story for people to tell. Story of girls and women receiving clothing donations for babies and for toddlers and for young people. The story of young people at Salem United Church of Christ sharing in a mission together as young people in a youth group together or as young people in their congregation. There's a testimony, beloveds, in that bottom picture you see as well. Pastor standing there with her bold, stole, and all of her members or many of her members standing there right beside her in an intergenerational fashion. There's a story behind that picture. And we want you not just to know those stories, we want you to tell those stories. Tell the stories of how a visit from a member changed the life of a family that was caring for a loved one in hospice or in hospital care. Have your stories and your testimonies ready to share with your congregation, beloved. It all makes a difference. Tell the stories of how your church is changing lives. Be generous about it, and you'll see that generosity also comes your way too.
James, I am enjoying your messages. I just want to do a quick time check. We have 10 minutes. And I think it's important that we do the pastors in the know slide.
Very good. Let's do that. Let's jump right in.
Let's jump to that.
What we have for you tonight is not just the reliance on a study that can be kind of cold sometimes. It can be the kind of thing that remains in a report and doesn't have the kind of impact that someone like my colleague, the Reverend Elizabeth Dilly, might have with you if you were to watch the video that she shared about pastors being in the know. Reverend Dilly serves MESA, our MESA team, our team at national setting that is the ministerial excellence support and and authorization team. And in that video, she comes to the conclusion that I came to as well, that knowing our members' pledging habits, knowing what our members give, it helps. It helps us serve our members more effectively. It helps us thank them more surely and perhaps even more frequently. It helps us also acknowledge great life changes that come either with a big gift that they might give or one that might be smaller than they usually give because their family is experiencing a transition or some kind of tragedy or some kind of trauma. Among those congregations whose clergy look at giving records, 58% reported an increase, beloveds, an increase in the amount they received over the past 3 years. 42% of that 58 with an increase of 10% or more. So it may just be true. The more our pastors know, the better they can do. I certainly saw it as I served the board of Habitat for Humanity, beloveds, and saw the executive director there just in a marvelous way. She knew not just what her board members gave to the organization, she knew what everybody on that donor list gave to Habitat for Humanity. And because of that, she could serve each donor more individually, more personally, and more surely and soundly. And we want our pastors to be able to do that too. Reverend Dilly's video is also a link we will provide for you so you can hear her take on what it means for pastors to be in the know on this subject too. I thought I saw a pastor that I know that jumped on our time together, and I wonder if she might comment. Did I see Reverend Sheila Harvey join our time together in this webinar tonight? Reverend Harvey, what would you say about what you know about your donors, your givers, the folk in your congregation there in Florida?
Hello and good evening. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be with you tonight.
Thank you.
Yes, this is just so enjoyable and so informative. I feel very blessed to be gaining all of this good knowledge. I would say that it is indeed a blessing to know the donors, to know our members. We're like a church family here in West Palm Beach, and we added something new over the summer, and it was a thank you note to our givers, and that seemed to have gone over well. It's usually a time where, the giving slows down, so we thought we'd just give them like a nice little summer reminder. So, but it's very helpful to be in the know.
Amen. Thank you so much, Reverend Harvey. I appreciate you very, very much on that. It sounds to me like, Reverend Owen, what you're going to tell us also about handwritten notes and thank yous to members. Reverend Owen?
Sure, if we could hop to the next slide.
Okay, will do.
We want to go one more. So ways to give electronically. And I want to take the last 5 minutes for those of you who use online giving. Could you please type in the chat the type of software that you use? Someone had done that earlier, but if you can start typing in, if it's PayPal, PushPay, Vanco, this is great information that we want to share with everyone who's on the call tonight. So we know, as James mentioned earlier, that after the pandemic, more of our churches were using electronic giving. And for our younger generation, this is definitely the way to go. Cash, I'm assuming that most congregations are still passing the collection plate. I know that sometimes when I attend church, that's what I like to do. I drop in money directly in the collection plate. And of course, we can still receive checks for donations, but we want to be mindful of our younger generation and the ways that they give. And last but not least, let's pay special attention to planned giving. August is Make a Will Month. That's every year. And at the national setting, we paid special attention to that this year. And we sent out a series of emails encouraging people to create a will or update their will. So that's a conversation you definitely want to start having in your congregations. I'm going to type in the address for the National Settings Philanthropy Team. If you have further questions about planned giving, just shoot us an email and we will definitely help you out.
Amen. So let the pastor know. Let him know when someone makes a first-time gift or when someone significantly increases or decreases their giving. Maybe you're not at a place yet where you can have the pastor know everything about the gifts of donors or givers in your church, but you can let the pastor know when someone makes a first-time gift or significantly increases or decreases their giving. That way, the pastor can send those notes of thanks or those notes of concern and care and compassion that mean so much in times like those. Or you can even assign a donor number and give the pastor a list, a donor number to each donor, and give the pastor a list of the amounts that folk in your congregation are giving. And that way, even if the pastor doesn't know the name of the donor, they can see what those donors are giving and they can serve those donors and those givers in your congregations even better. Let's grow towards a place where we are able to serve the whole congregation better, that we're able to teach year round on giving and find creative ways to say thank you to our givers. And let's make sure that in addition to bringing in gifts through checks, that we find as many other different ways, like electronic giving, to give, because the more ways people have to give, the more we're seeing people give to congregations in all the ways that we're beginning to study this and get to know these trend lines better. Tonight, are there questions that you have that you want to bring forth in the chat? We'll try and do our best with the questions that come in tonight. If we see in the chat your question at this time.
And you may also unmute yourself and just ask the question.
I have a question.
Please.
Jane Curran. I just wanted to share that our church has a clothing store, and it serves the community. And
Amen.
It has babies clothing, all kinds of infant apparel, and we have been doing that for the last 15 years. It is a community binder. People come to that store, and it really is a way for our church to help support people in the community. And the other thing we're doing, and we have a homecoming Sunday coming up, and we are inviting the whole community of East Hampton to come to our homecoming, and it will be an ice cream social, and we are inviting teachers especially, and we will be recognizing the teachers in our community.
Outstanding. Again, that attitude of gratitude.
Yeah,
absolutely. Tell the stories. Tell the story. Get the testimonies. Get people.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jane.
Yeah.
Who else has a question tonight?
Or comment?
Hello.
Hi.
I have a question. Hi, I'm Wilmington Slaughter from Plymouth Congregational UCC in Washington, D.C.
Well, welcome. Welcome.
I'm dialing in. I didn't do the regular Zoom. But I wanted to comment that my church has also, we have an annual back to school supply drive
Amen.
that goes to a school we adopted in our community. And we also have an annual community day, community festival day, and that's coming up in September the 21st. But I wanted to ask about the idea of pledging, because what happens when we have done our pledging campaigns? People, are so enthusiastic in the beginning, and they give, and then it just drops off and nobody pledges anymore. I don't know whether how to make pledging campaigns more effective. Because if you do it yearly, we found that people don't give, they don't stick to their pledges.
Amen. One approach might be to establish a quarterly business meeting schedule in your church. Do you presently have a business meeting that happens annually in your church? When is the main business meeting where most of the business is conducted for Plymouth?
Our annual meeting is coming up in October.
Amen. That's a big one, right?
Yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah. What if you agreed that in 2025 you would check in on one another after your annual meeting quarterly between 25 and 26? And at that time, you would bring a financial report. And that financial report you bring at that time would iterate, just where the church is in terms of giving. Sometimes giving comes in churches at the end of a given calendar year. The most giving, in fact, in churches has been shown to happen between the middle or end of October and the end of the year. Is that the kind of trend at your church in Washington, or is it different for y'all when you think overall about it?
I would say we've done some assessments of our giving, and unfortunately, one of the things we found is we may have, say, 300 people, but only about 100 people are really giving financially.
Absolutely.
Carrying on and that's
Absolutely.
not good to me.
Absolutely. And the hope is, as you tell the stories of some of these ways that you're serving the community, your community day, the way in which you're doing various things that the church gives of itself, of its time and talent and treasure beyond just the four walls of your church. As you all begin to tell more stories of generosity in your church, we talked about unselfies and the kinds of things that people give to beyond the church. As you tell more giving stories, more generosity will emerge. It will happen in your church setting. You'll see some miraculous things happening as a result of more thank yous going out from your pastor's desk or from a given ministry within the church. Maybe a men's or women's ministry or something like that. Just make it a point to send a thank you note every now and then, twice a year, to folk, just to thank them for their gifts or that kind of thing. Surprise them with something that shows the gratitude of the church, and just see if within a quarterly meeting schedule, you begin to see those gifts beginning to increase over the year to come. It might happen slowly now. I'm not saying that it's going to happen all of a sudden, but try some things. Try some things that you haven't tried before in terms of thanking and in terms of testimonies and sharing about the marvelous things and ways your church is serving people and changing lives in your community and around your city of Washington, D.C.
I want to read a few of the messages that are in the chat.
Please, thank you. Thank
Thank
you
you
for your question. Thank you.
We send quarterly giving. This is from June Botwell. We send quarterly giving updates. For those who pledge, they are shown their pledge and amount to date. We also give a monthly financial report to the church council and at the quarterly congregational meetings. So you can see where this church is keeping the members in the know.
Amen.
Mm-hmm.
Amen. Keep them in the know.
Hi, this is Nancy Nortz from Ridgefield, Connecticut.
Hi, Nancy.
Thank you for doing this. It's been a wonderful presentation and grateful glad to hear that we are making progress. We have added testimonials in this past year.
Hey.
We're going to take that going forward. And
Amen.
I wanted to share that this year we are working on a narrative budget instead of a line item budget, so that we are focusing more on the story versus the dollar amounts. But we still struggle that I heard somebody mention that, we have members that don't pledge at all, and trying to regroup with those folks that have not pledged in a while. So we are trying to do outreach calls to them and then do like a soft letter. We do a hard copy letter with the pledge form, but we also have gone online. And this year, we have our rally day on September 8th, and we
Amen.
have put in our quarterly or our e-blast, a little flash letter that goes out online to ask people to go online early so that we can save on expenses and not have to mail. So this is a new thing this year. So I'm curious to see if hopefully this doesn't backfire on us, but that we get early pledgers. And on our church council, I've challenged everybody that it is not just a stewardship committee, but it is the whole church. And as leaders of the different ministries and committees, I'm putting out there, we have to go for 100% participation, and that we will, write them up in our monthly newsletter for each group that comes in with 100% participation. So are those challenging things in a good light, or is that putting too much pressure on people?
You will find your pressure tolerance this year for your people. Those are great ways to challenge your folk. Those are great ways to figure out where everyone is in terms of their ability to roll with some of the punches. You can bet that I can tell you that since a recent political convention, I have gotten 6 texts inviting me to give to a particular political candidate that I've been profoundly moved that it's amazing to me that they've asked me 6 times already, and the convention just ended. That they have reached out reached out to me by name. And I mean, in my text, in my phone, I couldn't believe it, Nancy. It sounds like
They will keep it up.
Yeah, I know. You're a great leader in your congregation, Nancy. Those are great things to try. Be mindful as you're going along about the tolerance level. I think you'll find where your folk are, and you'll know a lot more about how to do it next year because you tried these steps this year. We all have to be innovative, and we all have to take risks. Albeit some of them will be smaller than others, but we all have to try and figure out ways to continue to inspire the best gifts from all of our folk that are connected with the United Church of Christ. We're a generous people. You'd be surprised at some of the causes and passions towards which donors give that are United Church of Christ people. And the size of some of those gifts. Oh my goodness. Let's continue forward with experimenting and doing some things in innovative ways and thanking our donors as we go along. You'll see it'll make a big difference in what they give as they go along. Who else has a question?
We did get some good feedback, because last year we did, the committee went out and we got a picture of our church and made a blank thank you cards, but it had the picture of our church, and we wrote personal handwritten thank yous to everybody. And we got great feedback on how, you know, it was a personal note to each person. And if somebody in the committee knew that person individually, it made it a more personal note versus just a general thank you. And we got great feedback on that we took the time to do those personal notes.
Amen.
James, there's a
Amen.
question in the chat that is just for you. It's from
Just for
Laura.
me. Oh my. Oh my. And I see Jackie Wheeler has her hand raised too.
And
But what is the question,
so this
Reverend
will
Owen?
piggyback on what Nancy just shared, but I would love for you to elaborate even further. The question, do you recommend handwritten thank yous versus typed thank yous?
I am a member of our generosity team, and I can tell you that from the national setting, when I count the number, I started in March of 2023, and I've written over 1,000 handwritten thank yous since March of 2023. That's the kind of commitment I have to handwriting notes. I think, and I think that the statistics will show it. It's better to send a tight note than no note, but the best note is the note you send that's handwritten that people can read. Don't send them a handwritten note that they can't read, y'all. They gotta be able to read it. You know, I print my notes. I don't write in cursive on my notes. I print them out, and I've had donors relay to me how they appreciate when they get those notes. They can actually read them, and one or two of them have said, you know, I would send you a note back, but you wouldn't be able to read my writing like I can read yours. So, so, so yes, please commit yourself to more handwritten notes now and into the future, and in your practices of welcoming greater gifts in your churches and in your settings with givers and donors. Amen.
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 Okay.
Thanks.
Jackie? Oh, Jackie, you can unmute yourself.
Hi, thank you. All I can see is a slide of a fiddler firm or something. I can't see anyone, you know, in the
Okay. Let me see how I can rectify that. I'm gonna see if I can rectify
I'm
that
sure I'm
somehow.
doing something wrong on my end.
You can
But
No, you good. You good.
just stop the share, James.
Just stop the share. Okay, I'll stop the share. All right.
There we go.
I can see the whole, you know, all the participants, at least their names.
There really are a lot of folk here tonight. There are a lot of
This
folk
is
here.
fabulous. It's fabulous. And I think it's so important to share ideas from one congregation to another. You know, having worked in the corporate and the higher ed, you know, benchmarking is one of the things people talk about a lot. And sharing, you know, sharing best practices, I guess is what I meant to say. Excuse me, wrong word.
Absolutely. No problem. I get it.
And so I just wanted to mention a couple things, and that is one of the things I think that could be folded into the thought process here is attracting new members.
Yes.
I served on we have a lot of people serving in ministry positions at Wellesley Village Church in Wellesley, Mass.
Okay.
And we're the one that just merged with another. I think there was something in the SNEU CC News. Oh, but you're a different conference. Excuse me. At any rate, so I think communication is really key in terms of having a website that's fresh and kept fresh, and that a weekly e-newsletter goes out to, you know, members and interested folks, and getting, you know, emails if possible in a low-key way when there are visitors, and having people even sit in the back of the church and welcome people you think might be, you know, they're visiting.
Absolutely.
I can say that in terms of stewardship, we made that part. Twice a year, we have something called seeker sessions, which are, completely up to folks if they want to go or not, and if they want, and those are followed by joining Sundays. And we've had someone from stewardship has come and spoken at those at one of the seeker sessions in those two different time periods, so that people, when they're hearing about all the great things about a congregation, or hearing that that's a part of supporting what we do. And so it kind of lays the groundwork, I think. I don't know how you can measure that, but anyway.
Well, Jackie, it sounds like you all are putting on a good bit of positive social pressure. Positive social pressure, right?
Well, I think so. And I think the thank you note is absolutely obligatory. You have to thank people. And
Absolutely.
I think even if it's a written letter and somebody from stewardship writes a little written note on the typed letter, I think that's even fine, is my opinion. And during stewardship, we have something, I can't remember what we call these parties, but they're given in two to four people's homes. You sign up and you attend these parties, and they're about stewardship, but people love the community and the wine. And the wine.
And the wine. Thank you, Jackie. I appreciate it.
So those are just some thoughts that I thought I would share but I think that, and then social media, I think, is very important, particularly for trying to reach younger folks. But I mean, that's how the best way to share information in terms of maybe bringing in some new folks. Because
absolutely,
it's just so key to always bringing in new people all the time. Anyway, so I just thought I would mention those things.
Thank you, Jackie. Appreciate you. Thank you so much. Kimberly Donaldson, you raised your hand. Come on.
By the way, I have to mention I went to school in Colorado.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. All right.
I guess
Kimberly Donaldson,
my question is for those that have used an online giving application. Does anyone have any pros or cons or for using their particular application, or if they've, started with one, didn't like it, and moved to another? So
can I start on the answer? Can I start on
just
it?
Before you go, just to say that so far we've only done Zelle, but other than that, we're just now looking to do a more robust online giving, as well as Zelle and cash in the plate, cash and checks and giving in church during service. So, but go ahead.
I just, we shop for these services, and the ones that have the best combination of fees and extra services are the ones that sometimes you have to go with. And sometimes, when we go shopping, we choose the right thing the first time out, right? I mean, we go to the tried and true, whatever that might be, and it works well for us. But sometimes we have to change. And that's what I hear your question peaking. What are some of the experiences? I see you got Breeze here. Who else in the chat? Reverend Owen mentioned where they give to. Sherry, you got where do you give? Who do you give to, Sherry?
We use PushPay, but we use PushPay, but I just wanted to share another idea that works really well for us, and that's on our website, we have a little button that says donate, and then you can go there. And what we have is a drop-down menu, and we change that menu according to whatever particular ministries are running right then. Like we might do one great hour of sharing or blanket Sunday or something like that. So people can choose that drop-down menu and give their special offering from the website.
Okay. Thank you. That works well. Okay. Very good. Sometimes it's also well of us to be mindful of what's going on in the culture as well. The church I attend here in Colorado in Inglewood, Mayflower Congregational Church, they use Venmo. Venmo's pretty new, right? I mean, that's one of the newer ways to give money. Venmo, you connect it to your own bank account and you can give to whomever's on the other end of that Venmo. What I noticed about my pastor is that he has a church way to give through Venmo. Then he's a band leader. And when you go see him with his band play a gig, you can give to his band while you're at the gig. So if you like the music, you can Venmo them a gift right then. It's amazing the ways in which some of these direct bank options like Venmo are now offered for giving. What are some of the other ones? I definitely have PayPal also. I'm a PayPal guy as well. Who else has got a way that you give that you can share with Kimberly tonight for her to shop a little bit?
Okay, I'm Gwendolyn Kirkland from Honolulu, Hawaii.
Come on, Honolulu!
Yeah, and I'm originally from Chicago, and I served as associate pastor of Stewardship at Covenant United Church of Christ in the south suburbs of Chicago.
Reverend Dr. Ozzie Smith was your pastor.
You got it
emeritus.
right. You got that right.
Yes.
And I worked to set up electronic giving years ago. We had Vanco. Now we have Cash App, Text to Give, Zelle, a Give Plus app, and also cash and checks.
Okay.
So 6 ways that people can give.
6 ways that they can give.
6 ways.
I'm going to ask you to say those again after I see Kimberly pick up her pen and write these 6 down.
I put them in the
there
chat.
You go.
I put them in the chat.
You put it in the chat. But I want you to say it again. Sometimes we're verbal people, my sister.
Okay.
Say it again.
Okay. Give Plus app. Zelle. Cash App. Text to Give. Banco. Cash and checks. So 4 electronic. And Vanco was the one that I investigated and set up. I liked it because it could be recurring. We had some members that set it up for recurring, and that helped even out our giving. So it wasn't peaks and valleys when people might go on vacation during the summer. It was never a drop off. It was very consistent. And as associate pastor of stewardship, I did stewardship 12 months a year, 52 weeks a year. For Lent, we had give up charging for Lent. So a chargeless Lent, 40 days, no charge.
My word.
The idea is to promote financial literacy. So we had classes on tithing. We taught tithing. We taught budgeting. We had financial planning for teens so that you come out of the chute with good financial habits. We had, during the time I was there, we set up an endowment. We had estate planning seminars from an attorney there so that people could be financially literate. And it was seasonal. And some of the things I would do, come into the pulpit in the summer, the beginning of summer, I'd have on a summer dress, a big summer hat. And the theme is summertime and the giving is easy.
I love it.
And then for now, going into this season is 4th quarter touchdown giving. So for those that are making up for their pledges or whatever, so it was always something that was a fun theme that people enjoyed. We did, as someone said, the narrative, we did the missional budget. So you could see pictorially depicted where funds went per the activities of the church. What was worship? What was music? What was the classes, and mission, that kind of thing. But we were really focusing on tithing and teaching people to tithe. And the pastor was aware of who gave what. We charted it. We had the donor numbers. And so we could show by numbers what percentage of people were giving in this range. So no names, but just the percentage that we're giving in this range over X number of dollars or this. And I would hear people say, wow, I'm not giving enough. I want to be in that other category. So it was, and handwritten notes. So all of the good things that you said. So this, of course, resonates with me because stewardship is my passion. That's who I am. That's what I do.
Gwendolyn Kirkland, where you sharing your gifts in Honolulu? I'm telling you, that preacher is missing you. That preacher up there in Illinois is missing you.
Yeah, at Manoa Valley Church, a wonderful congregation here.
Oh, wow.
I preached a stewardship sermon series last week, 4 Sundays. So stewardship of your body, stewardship of the land, so environmental stewardship, stewardship of your gifts and talents, and then lastly, money. Because people always think about stewardship as money, and it's really holistic. It's everything you do after you say you believe. That's stewardship.
I'm coming to Manoa Valley Church. I'm coming. I'm coming. Reverend Karen Georgia Thompson, our current general minister and president, visited there when we were there for annual meeting for Hawaii Conference. I'm coming to your church.
To Manoa Valley.
Came to Manoa Valley. I'm coming to your church. I went to Central Union, but I'm coming to your church next time.
Come to Manoa Valley.
All right. Thank you, dear. Bless you. Thank you. You. Friends, we need to round things up. I've been going long now. Help me round things up. What do we want to say in closing? And I know that Reverend Andrew Warner, my dear colleague, will have a webinar session on building narrative budgets. Please continue to watch the sources where you found out about this webinar to come to tonight. Keep watching those same sources wherever you found out about it, in your email, on the United Church of Christ website, ucc.org, wherever you found out about this webinar. Keep checking those sources for more webinars that are coming. Continue to pray for my colleague that he will rest and recharge in his sabbatical, and that he'll be all right. Y'all give a cheer for Coco Golf in the U.S. Open. I think she's playing tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate y'all. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a great night. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very helpful.
All right. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Good night.
Thank you. Good night. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was so wonderful. I appreciate you.
I'm glad. Gwendolyn, I'm so glad you came. This is clearly your passion. I need me a summer hat. I need a summer hat.
I'm signing off, but I have to say, Jacqueline, you have a wonderful name and I like your spelling better than mine. You have
Jacqueline and Jackie. Yeah, I love it.
I'm a Jacqueline too, formally, but as in real name, you just have the most calming voice.
Don't she have that? She sure does.
You have such a great, enthusiastic voice. So thank you both. Thank you all. I'm going to sign off.
Bless you. Bless you, Sister Wheeler. Thank you. Thank you, Sister Kirkland. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Have a good night. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Bless you. Thank you.
You gonna stay on, right, James?
Yes, I will. I'll stay on for a spell here. Beloveds, thank you. We're closing out now. Patty and Jeffrey and Caroline, thank you so much for coming. All of you, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Sherry. Thank you for coming tonight. Thank you for your observations as well. Thank you. We're closing out, friends.
You just want to hop on Teams? Let's hop on Teams.
All right, sounds good to me.
So I'm going to close out of this.
Okay.